Hello, Frederick. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay. We are eager to hear your smart speech concerning the role of higher education for social entrepreneurship, activities, etc. I suggest that it would be relevant that you would introduce yourself and then your speech.
Okay. So I actually have it on the next slide. My name is Fredrik Björk. I'm a lecturer in environmental science and social entrepreneurship at the Department for Urban Studies at Malmö University. Oops. I teach mostly in some programs that focus on sustainability, especially in two of our master's program, mostly actually in the leadership for sustainability international master's program, where we have a specific dedicated course for social innovation and social entrepreneurship. Actually, I was the person who started this, created it 5 years ago, but I decided to make it as coordinator because I hate administration, love teaching. So I focused on teaching social innovation and social entrepreneurship. We have also a recent addition to our international courses called Sustainable Public Management, which is a shorter summer course that is organized by the Swedish Institute and that are targeting young professionals from Eastern Europe, such as the Ukraine, Lithuania, Moldova, Georgia, etc. And in this course on sustainable public management, we focus on things like governance, and gender equality, but all cross-sector and social innovation. And also on this slide, which I hope that you will be able to access, share with participants, I also put in some links to my work, Google Scholar, where I publish some stuff, most of it unfortunately in Swedish, but I have a blog. I write about current development in the field of social innovation, social entrepreneurship, projects that I'm part of, etc. And actually this report that I'm sort of presenting today, I would write something on it on the blog in English. And also, actually I also included my Facebook link because I use Facebook as a way to sort of communicate about important initiatives around the world. The reason for me to do this report, this outlook on current developments in the field of higher education relating to sustainability and social innovation is, of course, because of our master's program. So we need to be updated on what's going on and to learn and to develop this course, this program continuously. And we're actually doing that all the time. So when the program starts again in the fall, it will be completely different from last year. So it's actually kind of an innovation process for us as well. So the topics today is, first I'm going to talk a little bit about the global coordination initiatives that are going on in the field of higher education and development. I'm also going to touch very briefly on the research and the research platforms around sustainable development in higher education. And I'm going to give you some examples of interesting and relevant on-campus courses and programs which focus on sustainability, but also on some recent development in the field of so-called MOOCs, online open courses. And then eventually I think hopefully I will reach some conclusions, and then of course we will have an opportunity to discuss, and I would also be very interested to hear about your experiences from the Ukraine when it comes to higher education and in the field of sustainability. So I think it's pretty interesting that we've seen a number of initiatives in the field of sustainable development and higher education. And this is not new. Actually, the decade from 2005 to 2014 was declared by the United Nations as the decade for education, higher education for sustainable development. And the outcome of this process was a number of initiatives. There's something called the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, which is a global undertaking. There's an initiative driven by the International Association of Universities. But when they did a kind of an evaluation or review of this decade of education, higher education for sustainable development, the most important aspects were the networks that have been created. And these networks of institutions in the field of higher education have been, on the one hand, also geographically networks, like in Europe, in Asia, South America, etc., but also thematically. Some examples are the so-called Copernicus Alliance, which is a European network of universities that focus on sustainable development in higher education. And one example is the treaty, Rio +20 Treaty on Higher Education that the Copernicus Alliance developed a few years back, which argue for the need for the transformation of institutions and knowledge structures in universities, but also argue for the need for innovation in order that universities need to drive innovation in order to reach sustainability. There is also another network interesting which focus on business schools. The principles of responsibility and management education, which is a partnership between the United Nations and a network of global network of business schools, which are sort of providing insights and principles, but also sharing knowledge and experiences in order to develop local courses and programs. And another thing that's also sort of driving this coordination and this kind of global initiatives are, of course, the new Sustainable Development Goals, where higher education is highlighted in a way that it wasn't in the Millennium Goals. So now we as employees and as scholars within higher education, we are sort of part of this larger process of striving for these Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that is very, very important. So what about research on sustainability in higher education? One of the outcomes of this decade for higher education for sustainable development was also a number of research platforms in this field. There are now a few international journals in this field, academic journals, and probably the most well-known is the International Journal of Sustainability in Higher Education. There are also international conferences, also regional conferences on this topic. Still, I wouldn't say that the research on sustainability in higher education is not really that mature. There are some interesting sort of processes going on, but a lot of the articles in this journal tend to be sort of case studies about what you're doing with your program in sustainability, and like interior design students' perceptions of sustainability, a number of those, and fewer are sort of taking the kind of deeper questions on sort of the role that universities might play and these challenges of what does it really mean to transform the knowledge structures of universities. That's not really what we can see in these journals. So it's probably an ongoing process, but still I would say that research on sustainability in higher education is at a very early stage so far. So what about linking social innovation, social entrepreneurship, and sustainability? Why should we do that, and how does it come about? Well, I think myself that the new role that innovation and entrepreneurship is playing when it comes to sustainable development is because of the widening of the concept of sustainable development. 20 years ago, a lot of the focus in sustainable development was on the environmental aspects. It was very much about environmental impact. It was, and still it's very much about sort of things like climate change, etc. But what we've seen in maybe the last 10 years or so is an increasing focus on social sustainability. And the question, of course, is how can we achieve social sustainability? And social innovation and social entrepreneurship have been sort of having kind of a greater role in the discussion as strategies to reach sustainability. And on the other hand, we can also see that social innovation and social entrepreneurship, which are not new concepts, they've been around for 15 or 20 years. Initially, they were also focusing a lot on sort of vulnerable groups, poverty, inequality, etc. But we can see increasingly that also social innovation and social entrepreneurship have come to include more environmental aspects also. And this image that I have here on this slide is one example of this. Of course, you might recognize the man, Mohammed Yunus, the Nobel laureate in economics, the man behind microfinance. And he is visiting here in this image a social enterprise in Malmö, in my hometown, called Jalla Trappan.
Sorry.
Yes?
We can see your slides, by the way.
You can't see your slide. My slides.
We can't.
Oh, all right. I'll see if I can.
Wrong.
Okay, I'm trying now.
Not yet.
Start sharing your desktop.
Start sharing your desktop.
Can you see it now?
Okay, we can see.
Right? Oh. Good.
Okay. We can go on.
Does it work now?
It works. Yeah.
You can see it now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Good. Great.
F5.
All right. So,
slide number 6.
F5.
yes.
Press F5.
Press F5, fifth slide, please.
What?
F5.
F5
Push
button.
F5 to have a full screen.
Full screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying. You can't see it now?
Let it be, Frederick. Please, you can go on.
It's okay, sit down.
Yeah.
We can see. Yeah.
Okay, you can see it?
No problem. No problem.
I'll try to give it one more try. So let's see now. Window.
Okay. Now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
All right. So anyway, this social enterprise, Jalla Trappan in Malmö, when it started a couple of years back, the focus was on unemployed immigrant women. It was very sort of social in its approach, trying to provide work for them, etc., building on their skills and so forth, with a focus on social cohesion, which is something that you will see in a large number of European projects in a similar perspective. But what have happened over time is that increasingly ecological aspects have also become part of their operations. Now they are engaged in several projects, such as working with urban farming. Also, most of the food that they produce are ecologically produced, and they are working with designers to develop new products in a kind of a circular economy perspective. So it's one of these, one example of how social entrepreneurship initiatives have moved from being very social to having a more kind of integrated sustainability perspective. And actually, as I'm part of the board of this social enterprise, this is also, I can also provide you with this as a kind of example of how you can work with partners in civil society when you're doing courses and programs on sustainability. So I'm using Jalla Trappan as a case study for my students. And in my master's program on leadership for sustainability, the students work in groups to help Jalla Trappan develop their business model and their strategies, work with marketing, etc., in order to understand sort of the challenges that you're having as a social enterprise, but at the same time, they are also providing Jalla Trappan with resources. They are providing them with new strategies, etc. So it's a kind of a mutual beneficial relationship. And this is not unique, and I will come to that further on, but we're seeing more and more of this, that in courses and programs focusing on sustainability, increasingly students are doing applied projects together with stakeholders outside of the university. That's a general trend, I would say. So now I'm moving to slide number 7. I don't know if you can see them. In any way, this is on the kind of more traditional sustainability programs and courses that we can see on campus. And I've took 4 examples two from the United States and 2 from Sweden. The first one is a course called Sustainable Communities that is given at Rochester Institute for Technology in upstate New York. And the focus here in Sustainable Communities is to engage together with local organizations, together with students, with the background that citizen participation and collaborative processes are what's needed in order to reach sustainability in the local community. And what's interesting here is that Rochester Institute for Technology is a technical university. They're very focused. It's where Kodak and Xerox and Bausch & Lomb, who make lenses, have developed at this campus actually a long time ago. So it's a very technical university, but the purpose of this course is to help students to think about sustainability in another way than purely technical, and to understand social sustainability. And they're talking about sustainability as a way to bring light to the connections between natural and human communities, and work together closely with local organizations in order to sort of get a deeper understanding of the theoretical concepts by applying them in local processes and local projects. And I actually visited Rochester 1.5 years back and did some teaching in this course, and met the students, and for many of them it was kind of a life-changing experience. And several of them sort of changed their career paths after taking this course in order to engage more with local communities. And this idea about that courses and programs can actually transform mindsets of students, I think, is something that we see a lot in what's going on right now in this field. The next example is a program called Sustainability Leadership from Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin. And they are saying on their homepage that they are part of this growing number of sustainability leadership programs. And that's specifically what I'm interested in. They are also talking about their program not as teaching something, but they are talking about this program as a collaborative innovation center. A collaborative innovation center where faculty, students, and regional sustainability experts explore emerging ideas. And in the same way, all the text that they have about the program is that it's something that we are doing together. Together, we are leading the change for healthier, more resilient organizations and communities. And also they are saying that as part of the program, you will address real-world sustainability issues. Also, here again, applied projects. And quotes from students are like this: our community of learners is not only a wonderful think tank, idea generator and sounding board, it's also a great repository of expertise that encompasses a wide and diverse range of knowledge. So this idea that it's not about sort of the expert teacher telling the students about what's going on, but rather a kind of a community of practice, communities of learners. And this is also something that you can see in a number of these programs. At the same time, this is maybe kind of a contradiction. They're also saying, because of course in the United States, universities have to make their money through students paying tuition fees. So they are saying also, in order to sell their program, that whether your career is in business, non-profit, etc., the advantages of focused sustainability leadership is increasingly recognized as a must-have in every industry. And this is also something that resonates in quotes from former students that are saying, yes, it's repaying already, and so forth. So I think that's also interesting. There is a kind of a market approach to this, seeing that the ideas about sustainability and sustainability leadership is something that's in demand in several industries. And now for the two Swedish examples, and I'm using my own program as one example. And we are saying that we intend these programs for students and professionals from different backgrounds, but with a common interest to develop their knowledge, understandings, and skills in leading projects and organizational development to reach sustainability. And this about diverse backgrounds, I can say that we have had students with backgrounds in music science, in archaeology, but of course also engineers, economists, etc. And from all countries around the world. We usually have like 2 Swedish students and about 45 from the rest of the world. Increasingly, we see students from Eastern Europe, which I think is very interesting. We try to bring them together in mixed group, which mix their academic backgrounds, but also their geographical background in order to have very diverse and innovative groups. And what we are saying also in our program is that the vantage point for us is that sustainability requires new forms of leadership and organization involving diverse groups of stakeholders and so on. And it also requires a new way of thinking sustainability within and between organizations. And we are using tools such as social innovation and social entrepreneurship to reach there. Next case study is Karlskrona, the Technological University in Karlskrona, which has a master's program called Strategic Leadership Towards Sustainability. And they are also talking about this in a similar way, methodology leading the transition towards sustainability. So it's skills and methodologies. And they're also talking about multicultural, multidisciplinary setting, strengthening and developing your personal and professional leadership capacities. So, and they're also talking about that one of their key things are this supportive global community of strategic leaders and change agents. So another kind of trend is this, that it's not only about your professional skills, it's also about your personal aspects, self-leadership, understanding yourself, etc. But I think probably the most interesting trend is that we are seeing a number of MOOCs, multi-online open courses at higher education. And I'm using 2 case studies here, one from Sweden and one from the United States again. From Sweden, it's a course given at Lund University, which is neighboring to us, about 20 minutes from here. And they have been doing a number of MOOCs over the years, and right now they are doing a MOOC called Greening the Economy, Sustainable Cities. And for me to understand what it means, I'm also taking these MOOCs as kind of part of my own research. And this course on greening the economy is quite traditional. It's kind of, they're saying that it's about exploring cities and so forth, place cities in the context and so forth. It's mostly films, filmed lectures, etc. And students are supposed to do quite traditional assignments in one way or another. And they are saying, because I also know some people that work there, they're saying that they're using these courses in order to recruit students mostly. So if students are interested enough in taking these MOOCs, they will hopefully in the future take the campus courses where they think that they can sort of learn more about sustainability. So this is one example. The other example is something called the U-Lab, with the undertitle Transforming Business, Society and Self, which is given at MIT in Boston by Otto Scharmer, who developed the idea of the theory of you. And they are doing this course in a quite different way. At first they're saying that we live in a time of disruptive change, one that requires a new collective leadership capacity. And they're saying also that we invite you on a journey to see the world in new ways and practice a method that allows leaders, entire organizations, and larger social systems to connect with and actualize their highest future possibility. And what they focus on in the course is the leadership knowledge of the self-knowledge. Who am I? What is my journey and work? And also capacities of deep listening, precise observation and dialogue. And then what they are calling practices for creating institutional innovations, in fact, they are working with design processes in order to develop different prototypes, which they talk about as social innovations. So with the U-Lab, you're not supposed to do assignments. You're supposed to develop prototypes locally that create social change in your local community. So it's quite a different perspectives, and it's been increasingly popular. The first U-Lab course in spring 2015 had 30,000 people participating. The second course in the fall of 2015 had 50,000 people. So now more than 80,000 people have taken these two courses. And there's a new course coming up in the fall right now. They are producing it. What's interesting is that when they did a kind of an exit poll or something like that, and asking the students about it, 52% of participants, that's half, were saying that it was eye-opening. Well, that's good, of course. If it's not eye-opening, you're still asleep, right? But 36%, that's 1/3 of those who took the course, called it life-changing. Life-changing. And I think this is very important. This is very interesting, because I think this is also part of the direction where these courses are taking. It's not about learning skills or technologies or understanding something technical. It's about life-changing, mindset-changing approaches. And this is how all these courses and programs are conceptualized or talked about in this way, at least. The question is, of course, are they really life-changing, or what are they? So now I come to my conclusions. And I think that what we can see with a number of these courses and programs, books, as well as campus courses, is that they are increasingly becoming global in their focus. So they are working with global issues. They're also organized in global ways. There's a kind of an idea that if we can bring in students from diverse backgrounds and diverse geographical locations, it will be better, basically. So a global focus in several ways. At the same time, they are increasingly applied. So it's less about listening to lectures from professors and more about doing very applied, concrete projects together with stakeholders outside of universities. And we're also seeing an increased focus in working with NGOs in this case. Less with businesses and public administration, more with NGOs. So NGOs are sort of considered to be a key actor in order to sort of work with sustainability. And that's part maybe of this kind of mindset change. We can also see that we increasingly, I think, have integrated programs that are cross-disciplinary. We see less of these smaller courses that was around for some time ago for people to sort of spice up their MBA. Couple of years with the traditional stuff, and then you would have like a few weeks in sustainability. Now we see these integrated cross-disciplinary programs that work for maybe a year or 2 years, 1 or 2 year masters. And what I can see also is that many of my students already have their MBAs. They already have masters. But what they're taking now is this program in order to sort of apply a wider, more kind of sustainability mindset to their sort of professional backgrounds. And I think also we can see that when it comes to sustainability, we see increasingly a focus on leadership and strategy rather than the technical aspects of sustainability. Less natural science, less technology, more focus on leadership and strategy. And also, and this is very recent, I think, maybe during the last 3, 4, 5 years, a focus on the self, the identity of you and your mindset. It's not just about leading others, it's about leading yourself. And I think that's where we are right now. I would also like to add that there are, of course, challenges for this. One challenge is, of course, for organizations and structures in society to understand the potential that you have in higher education. So sometimes it feels like you are, as a scholar or a professor working in this field, that you're fighting an uphill battle. You have to convince continuously of the value to bring in universities. At the same time, we as universities also need to work with it. We need to become more relevant. We need to break out these silos. We need to get away from a kind of leadership that we have today in order to have a more participatory approach. So we need also to open up to the partners that we can see out in the global community that want to participate and to help us develop new approaches for teaching higher education for sustainability. All right, so that's more or less my presentation. And I'd be happy to answer all kind of questions that you have, of course.
Thank you very much, Fredrik. It was very inspiring, and I feel that we have many questions from our participants. Будь ласка, якщо є питання, прошу, тільки ближче, напевно, до мікрофону. The first question is.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thanks a lot for your speech, and it's a great experience for us to hear from you, and especially it's a great pleasure because we have the same flags. First of all, yes, the colors. It's just a joke. And the first question is, do you have Ukrainian students at first? And the second is, have you got any programs for Ukrainian educators to take part, to apply for? Thank you very much, once again.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have one Ukrainian student right now, actually. Leadership for sustainability, and she's a very good student. So it's an honor. I can say that it shows that you have good competence in your universities. Unfortunately, we don't have any programs for Ukrainian educators, but it's a very good idea. I think we have opportunities through the Swedish Institute to maybe do something in this field. So it's absolutely a kind of an avenue that I would like to develop further in the future. Absolutely.
Fredrik, could you recommend something modern contemporary issues, I mean research issues for Ukrainian scholars in order to develop the concept of sustainable development in the environment of Ukrainian universities, because this topic is underdeveloped at the moment?
Yeah. I think.
What would
would
you
I-
recommend for universities including this?
Yeah. So I would say, in order to create change in institutions such as universities, which are extremely conservative, if not even reactionary, I can say, I mean, that's from my own experience, I think you need to work at both levels. You need to work on the ground level. So this master's program that I created with some friends was really kind of a bottom-up approach. We got together a couple of friends and we discussed and said we need to do something like this. But we also managed to engage with the top management of the university. So we got the support from the chancellor and the vice chancellor. So we are both working sort of on the top and at the bottom level at the same time. And I think that's really important because you can work a lot among the grassroots, but nothing will really change. But when we have the support of the chancellor, it forces middle management to listen to us. And actually, when we got a new chancellor at university last year, in her first newsletter to all employees, she was saying that she was proud to come to a university that focused on social innovation. So she was really highlighting the concept of social innovation. And that, of course, for us, it meant a lot. It meant that we had an acceptance from the top to do what we are doing. So my experience is that middle management is difficult to handle. The strategy that we have also used in order to have a greater impact and to have more acceptance in the institution is to work with international collaboration. So we have developed a number of networks, and the fact that I'm talking to you now is an aspect of it. It is, of course, important politically within my university that I can say that I'm having this conversation with scholars in the Ukraine on this topic. We have worked with universities in the United States. We are working together with universities in France and in China in this topic, actually. And I think working with these global networks also means that you have a lot of input, you have ideas, you have the opportunity maybe to bring in scholars, high-ranking scholars and new perspectives with low costs, which means that you can raise the quality of your courses and you can engage in global conversations easily. So I think work on grassroots, convince the top management, work with international networks. That's my advice.
Thank you very much.
And topics, yes, and topics especially, I would say, go for what we are doing here. In several of these examples, work with applied project with stakeholders outside of university. That is really what all students are saying, that this is mind-changing, when you have the opportunity to work with real-life projects that are really showing this is what sustainability looks like in real life and not in the textbooks. And of course, environmental sustainability can be a bit difficult, but can be done. But social sustainability means that you have to engage with persons, with organizations that have specific social problems. The challenge here is that you have to have the capacity to engage in these discussions with the students afterwards, not just to send them out. You have to prepare them, you have to give them opportunity to reflect on what they have seen, and sometimes maybe have very difficult discussions with them afterwards. But it's really worth it. And I would say that even though it takes a lot of work, it's very beneficial for me as well. I learn a lot from my students every time they do projects. Okay.
Thank you very much, Fredrik. Could you close your sharing the document?
I should close my, okay. I'll see. So, now it's just me, or?
Hi, Fredrik. I would like to ask you about, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It's amazing, it's very good. It's exactly what we build our strategy to do in our organization. We just 1 year old, the young organization for the educators. And can you explain a little bit how it will be easy to maybe not easy, how will be to integrate to international community for Ukrainian educators, integrate to international educators community. And what you think about maybe build some project like in leadership institute for educators, Ukrainian Educators Leadership Institute. This is very important for today, exactly today, for the educators in Ukraine. Don't you think? Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a very good idea. The first question about integration, I was not really clear what you meant. I lost some of the words, I think.
International Educators Society has a lot of organizations. What you think easy, because you educators, our educators, Ukrainian educators, how we can join some, what you will recommend, what organization we can join, integrate, because Ukraine don't have a chair right now in, not yet, but we try to prepare ourselves, our leaders, to take chair Ukraine in some international societies. What could be?
Yes, I would. My suggestion would be to first form something on the kind of the national basis, because there are so many organizations around, and if you would have like 2 working in one organization and 2 Ukrainians in another and 2 in the third, that won't make sense. It's better to form your community first and then choose one international collaborator organization after that, so that you can have a more focused discussion on how you can integrate it into your universities. That's what I would say. And to have a kind of a leadership institute for educators, that's a fantastic idea. And I think one aspect of this is when we're talking about leadership, it's not only about sort of leadership out there, it's also about academic leadership.
That's what,
What kind of leadership do we need in universities? How are we leaders in our processes? Because we know that we have a tremendous potential because of our networks, because of our knowledge, because of our students, because of our closeness to research. So we must also lead in order to create change.
Exactly. Thank you very much. It was a nice pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring and very interesting presentation. And I'm a philosopher from Academy of Science of Ukraine. My question will be concerning the very important issue about changing knowledge structure. As you mentioned, it's very important. And the question is, how do you see what the ways, what the directions of this transformation? Because you also mentioned that less natural sciences, more humanities, and what do you see? It's not the way of transformation natural sciences as well, because we now see tremendous transformation in natural sciences and in humanities in terms of transdisciplinary approaches or interdisciplinary approaches, and how these changes could be implemented in academic curriculum. Because, as for example, philosophy now more open to natural sciences, but not in terms of its purification, but in terms of its ontological connotations of natural sciences. And it's the question, how do you see this process? And another very important moment, the concept of knowledges of society, recognition of different kind of knowledge which was not recognized so far. What do you see how it could be implemented in curriculum and used for sustainable development in this issue? Thank you.
This would require, thank you. Thank you for this question. It would require a whole book, I think, or a whole lecture to answer.
In nutshell.
And actually the question is probably more important than the answer. Of course, there is no answer. We don't know where it will take us, but we need to start. And in a similar way, as I mentioned before, that we as scholars, we are leaders. We must also try to lead and to engage in this process. We can't just talk about cross-disciplinary approaches. We must embrace them and try to understand them and try out what it means, really. We need to start with ourselves. And it can be, of course, very different. And I think what we're seeing that is probably now that we see an increasing interest in sustainability for perspectives from the humanities. And that's probably because of the increased focus on social sustainability. In order to understand social sustainability, we need to have a more humanistic approach, I think. At the same time, it's important not to sort of to disregard the natural sciences. And I think the natural sciences have also been closing in on sort of the humanities perspectives. Actually, I would say that maybe actually the social sciences and humanities need to open up more to the natural sciences. There's things going on in this process, but we need we don't know where it will take us. But what we can see in Sweden is that a lot of the structures to research is sort of use a rhetoric about cross-disciplinary approaches, etc. But when it comes to actually receiving research funds, it's not the cross-disciplinary approaches that get the money. It's more the traditional approaches. So I think it's important that we start to engage, but also that those who finance research open up for this. And sometimes I can see that engaging in once again, international networks can provide new opportunities for this. Sometimes it's difficult in your home country, but you can find other partners in other countries that can sort of support you and give you input. So I think the international networks are also opening up for more cross-disciplinary approaches. That's my advice, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Magic, hello, nice to see you again. And as head of NGO, Boruch, I would like to ask a question. What is the role of NGOs in development of sustainable universities? Because you told that students involved in Yala Trappen work. So what is your experience in this field? Thank you.
Well, I think when it comes to the concept of like social innovation, researchers and as well as those who sort of debate the issue have argued that NGOs, or civil society organizations, are a kind of a research and development lab for social sustainability, actually. We know that business won't sort of change the world. It won't sort of solve social issues with business measures. We've seen in most countries that governments are also unable to solve the big social challenges. They might do something on the general level, but they are not as progressive. They are not sort of challenging norms and structures. So I think the role of NGOs is to challenge norms and structures and to provide critical viewpoints on what's going on in different perspectives. And what we can see, at least in Sweden, but I think it's also the case in many other, at least Western European countries, I don't know about Ukraine, we can see that an increasing part of the research funding for us does not come from the government, but it comes from businesses, it comes from European structural funds, etc. And this means that this funding for research is usually sort of targeted on specific issues. It's kind of instrumental. Businesses are saying, we need research to do this in order to provide growth or whatever. The European Union is saying that we need research to drive this political agenda. And this means that a smaller portion of the research funding is available for critically investigating policies and business practices. And this means that but who are challenging this out in society? Mostly it's civil society organizations. So that's why we need, as universities, to engage much more with civil society organizations in order to have critical perspectives and to support also the civil society organizations in their work for a better and more sustainable society.
Thank you very much, Frederick. More questions, please. No questions, Frederick. Thank you very much. We wish you were here. It would be the best case. The best regards to your mom. The best regards to Tom. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. See you in October. Hope to see.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Друзі, у нас 5-хвилинна перерва для налаштування наступної презентації пана Курбатова з приводу університетських рейтингів, і ми приступаємо вже наживо.
У нас іде захід, я не дуже не знаю.